People are always late for these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it a Sephardic custom to be late in general, as it is in Spain? In Spain, people are always late.
Yeah, I know.
But we will still start on time. So with that, I would like to welcome Dr. Carlos Yebra López and tell you a little bit about him. He has a master's degree in philosophy and a PhD in Spanish and works as a lecturer in Spanish at New York University. And he's a research assistant in Judeo-Spanish grammar at University of Birmingham, UK. Within the realm of Sephardic studies, he specializes in revitalization of Ladino by digital means. In 2017, together with Alejandro Ayuda and Benny Aguado, he co-founded Ladino 21, a community-based digital archive devoted to grassroots documentation of the contemporary Sephardic diaspora through audiovisual materials in Ladino produced in the 21st century. Ladino 21 enables Ladino speakers worldwide to document the multiple histories and versions of their common identity in various ways with the focus on semi-structured interviews. Please help me welcome Dr. Carlos Yebra López.
Thank you so much, Mark, for the introduction. And I would like to begin by thanking sincerely both you for organizing the event and also the rest of the speakers for the flexibility in accommodating this last minute issue. And so without further ado, I would like to jump straight into the presentation itself. And so as you can see on the screen, I'm going to address Judeo-Spanish or Ladino on the internet. So we'll start by the end. We'll start by telling what's happening right now in the world of Ladino, particularly as mediated by the digital. And so one of the questions that I asked in my research is, how does Judeo-Spanish or Ladino unify the global Sephardic community? How do people come together from different corners of the world, speaking Ladino, and find a common place on the internet? And as you can see on the screen, I summarized that difference as pertaining to two main paradigms. So there's a pre-internet period and then a post-internet period. And the nature of the interaction in Ladino changes dramatically from the pre-internet to the post-internet period, although there are continuities, of course. And in order for us to envisage how the connection between different communities in the world in the pre-internet days operated, it is useful to go to the concept of imagined community, which some of you might be familiar with. But in case you aren't, we can summarize it as follows. Benedict Anderson, in his work Imagined Communities, claimed that the members of even the smallest nation will never know most of their fellow members, since they are not physically in the same territory, meet them, or even hear of them. Yet in the minds of each lives the image of their own communion. So this is about how people who will never meet in person are able to connect with each other. And they're able to do so inter alia by virtue of the print media, by virtue of reading the same newspapers, participating from the same events, etc. And so here Benedict Anderson had in mind people from the same sovereign state who wouldn't meet each other in person, but would imagine themselves as belonging to the same sovereign state, as being citizens of the same country, by virtue of the print media and other ways of life and material expressions of those ways of life that they share. However, what the internet allows us to do is to dissociate the home from the land. We no longer need to be in the same country in order for us to be at the same event, for instance, right? We are sharing the same event. Some of us are in the US, other people are in Turkey, in Israel, etc. And so that creates new opportunities. And the first author to theorize that change, that transition, was Michael Held from the Autoridad Nacional del Ladino, so the authority for Ladino and its culture in Israel. And there she coined the term digital homeland with that hyphen in between that seeks to signal the discontinuity or the contingency between the home and the land. You can share the home, you can be in the same community without sharing the land, without being a citizen of the same sovereign state. And so the way Held defines a digital homeland is as follows. She says, a digital homeland with that hyphen in between is a virtual territory in which long lost offline communities, communities that have almost disappeared, say for instance in uber Sephardic cities from a traditional perspective, such as Salonika, are reconstructed online. A virtual replacement or an ersatz, if you like, for the actual Sephardic physical place, leading to the creation of a contemporary reconstructed Sephardic personal and collective memory that could have not existed otherwise or anywhere else. There is no such thing as Sephardistan. There is no such thing as a territory where all Sephardim live together, a sovereign state. Instead of that, there are virtual communities where citizens from all over the world can come together and be united in their sharing of their collective memory, mostly in Ladino, but not only. It can also be, for instance, in English, Turkish, Spanish, as we're doing right now. And so the success of these digital homelands is predicated on a number of conditions that were already identified by Joshua Fishman. And there are two key conditions here. There's intergenerational transmission. This means that the internet connects people from different generations, as it is the case in this talk, for instance. For instance, through the generation of Ladino apps similar to Duolingo. This attracts the younger generation because it taps into an audiovisual mode of interaction that they are most familiar with, but at the same time, it also attracts the attention of the older adults that are interested perhaps more in the content than in the audiovisual transmission of it. And it also creates functional isolation. It creates a safe space, let's call it that way, where people can actually practice Ladino without the interference of other languages, which is hard to get in the real world, in the physical places outside perhaps the home or the family realm. So we're going to see now specific examples of how these digital homelands work. So there are two generations of digital homelands in my research. The first generation would be email lists. That's how the first digital homelands look like, and the foremost example of this is Ladino Comunita, which was created in 1999 by Rachel Amado Bornik, who I'm sure all of you know here. And the idea was originally from Moshe Shaul, if I'm not mistaken, who suggested the creation of such email list in Israel. But Rachel was the one that took that and implemented the idea with just a handful of people who were interested at the beginning in participating from that email list. And from that, it just expanded and exploded into thousands of people that are writing every day on this email list. And there are other examples. There are similar examples that were not as successful, such as the Ladino Culture Forum or Sephardim Muestro. Sephardim Muestro is still going, so it's still active many years later. But I think the most relevant example here is still Ladino Comunita, which is still active 20 years later. And it's just as simple as Googling Ladino Comunita and identifying Rachel's email, sending her an email. And the only condition for anybody in the world, Sephardi or not, to participate in this email list is to speak Ladino, is to write in Ladino. But there are also moderators in this email list, which means that even if you write with a lot of mistakes, these are going to be corrected before the email is published, which is also great to know. So you don't need to be proficient in Ladino for you to participate in this email list. And in fact, this is amongst others, one of the ways in which I myself learn Ladino, by sending emails, learning from the edits, and making notes and saying, okay, next time I'll correct this, and step by step. It helps, and it has helped, continues to help a lot of people across the world in learning Ladino. And Rachel is someone who's very generous. Anytime I've had a question outside this email list, I've need something translated, or I had a question about Ladino, she's always answered each and every of my emails. So it's really about empowering people to get closer to Ladino. So that's what I think is one of the conditions of the success of Ladino Comunita, that it really makes people better at Ladino and at knowing the Sephardic culture. So here is Rachel herself. And I will play the video normally, but for time constraints, I won't today. But we have many videos from Rachel, for instance, in Ladino 21 in our platform. So it's sufficient to Google Ladino 21 to access Rachel's video, Karen Sarhon, we have Jake in there to have many Ladino speakers. And the second generation is the social media generation, right? So social media begins imposing itself as the main platform for the content, or for content creation and distribution from 2004, particularly with Facebook. But as regards Sephardi online communities, they begin using social media around 2008. That's when the first Sephardi online communities that are predicated on social media began to emerge. And so, for instance, Ladino 21 was created in 2017 using YouTube as its main medium. So we use YouTube to showcase our digital archive. And Ladino 21, as Jake said, as Mark said before, was created by myself, Alejandro Acero Ayuda, and Benny Aguado in 2017, with the intention of documenting how Ladino is spoken across the world in the 21st century. And now we have expanded into Ladino apps and classes and courses, etc. But it began as a digital archive, and it's still a digital archive to the extent to which we post new audiovisual materials every week. Another example, these are just some videos of Ladino 21. Another example would be the inclusion of memes. The inclusion of memes in Ladino, it's a new genre that social media has allowed us to create. So for instance, here we can see in Ladino, when you realize that this Al-Had, this Sunday, you have a number of activities that are taking place currently across the world in Ladino. Particularly Sundays are days where we have a lot of events taking place in this language. So we have the Yeshiva Minhat Milena, which is a school for rabbinical studies that takes place online and is conducted by Rabbi Eliezer Papo. We also have academic conferences such as Revolutionizing Ladino, which took place recently in Washington, Seattle. The Encontros Al-Had, which include a host and a guest that speak in Ladino about a number of topics. And we can also have Skype sessions, one-on-one classes, tutorials, etc. in this language. This is an example of an email that I wrote for Ladino Comunita. And as you can see here, it's important to realize that there are linguistic innovations that are allowed by technology. For instance, the use of the inclusive form of gender, as in caros todos, caras todas, with the use of the at, which didn't exist prior to the internet. And it already exists in Spanish and other languages. It has existed in those languages for a long time, but it's coming also to Ladino, at least on the side of some of its authors. And what's interesting here in this email is at the end of each email, one has to write his or her name and then where that person is from and where that person is living right now, which may or may not coincide with the place where that person comes. And that creates a sense of community because many of these places, not particularly Zaragoza, but maybe Salonika or Istanbul or Safed or Belgrade, those places are very evocative of the Sephardic diaspora. So that creates a sense of community as well, a sense of home that transcends the mere online community, that brings people together. Another example is Ladino Forever, which is an initiative developed by Michael Halfi since 2017. He's living in Istanbul and he posts refranes. He posts proverbs in Ladino, and both in Ladino and its translation in English. So for instance here, cuando hace lluvia, hinche los cubos. Right? When it rains, fill the buckets. Take advantage of negative opportunities to turn them into positive opportunities. And we also have WhatsApp groups. Now, I'm not so sure about WhatsApp groups because although they combine the audiovisual register with the written one, it is true that some of them are unidirectional in the sense that the admins have the possibility of expressing themselves through those messages, but it is not always the case that every participant has the choice to reply or the option to reply and interact, which is something that may or may not be helpful depending on a plethora of circumstances. Other than that, we have language learning apps and websites where Ladino is disembarking. So for instance, until recently, there were no course of Ladino in Busuu or Duolingo or Memrise or the most relevant language learning platforms. But now we have a Ladino course at UTOC that I developed myself in partnership with Alejandro Acero from Ladino 21, and also Rachel and Benny collaborated in this course by recording the corpus with their own voices. And we are in the process of creating a further course with Link, which is based in Canada and offers language courses in the following, as you can see on the screen: English, French, Spanish, etc. So we're adding Ladino around June this year, approximately. Of course, Zoom has meant boom for Ladino, and it continues to bring the Ladino-speaking community together. Particularly the Encuentros del Had are massively successful, but many other initiatives, such as the Sephardic Digital Academy by the Jewish Sephardic Brotherhood of America, or the Yeshiva Mihat Milena by Rabbi Eliezer Papo, etc. What else? Qual lo que vos conte? Probably this is one of the most iconic moments on how the internet in general and the audiovisual register in particular has brought the Sephardic community together. This was a concert organized by the news platform eSefarad in April 2020. And it brought singers from all over the world singing Esta Montaña. And the concert was entitled Unidos por el Ladino, United by Ladino. And the singers ended singing in unison to exemplify, to instantiate the extent to which the internet and music can bring the global Sephardic community together. As I mentioned, there's also the Sephardic Digital Academy, which has implemented a number of courses, not only on the Ladino language, but also cuisine and Sephardic traditions and customs for free. And the Yeshiva Mihat Milena, as I mentioned, where we basically read the Me'am Loes in Ladino, many words in Hebrew, but mostly in Ladino. And the Encuentros del Had, as I already pointed out, which continue to date. There's a new Encuentro del Had this very Sunday, for instance, where we're talking about Sephardic communities and synagogues in Turkey. And that's essentially a summary of the most important digital homelands that have brought the Sephardic community all over the world together, particularly as expressed in and through Ladino. And I was just wondering whether you have any questions. I will be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting. Does anyone have any questions? If you take yourself off of mute, we can hear you. Okay, so again, thank you, Carlos, and we will be looking forward to future events, and we will be talking again very soon on what things that might be of interest to our community.
Absolutely, anytime. Thank you all. Have a great day. Nos
Bye-bye.
vemos.
Stop share.
Oh yeah, I will. Let me see. How can I stop the sharing?
So while he's doing that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Karen Sarhon was born in Istanbul in 1958. She has a bachelor's degree in English and literature and a master's in social psychology and applied linguistics. And she wrote both her master's thesis on Judeo-Spanish language. And worked as an English language instructor and a testing language expert at the university for many years. And then she founded the Sephardic Cultural Research Center, where she's been working as a coordinator ever since. The Sephardic Center in Istanbul continues its work on preservation and documentation on all aspects of the Sephardic culture. And so with that, I welcome Karen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this program. Jake, who is always there. It's always a joy to see you. Always present at wherever I am. Okay, so today, actually, I was supposed to go first, but Carlos probably had something to do, so he left. His presentation was supposed to be following mine, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So you just imagine that I'm the first, and just put whatever Carlos said in the back of your head. Well, first of all, let me make a very short introduction, and then I will go on to show my PowerPoint. So people keep asking me, what is Ladino? I mean, what kind of a language is it? Actually, that is a good question, because it is well, we have to go back to 15th century Spain, where there were little kingdoms all around the Iberian Peninsula, and in all these different little kingdoms, a different dialect of Spanish was spoken. The biggest of these kingdoms was the Kingdom of Castile, so Castiliano was the main kind of dialect, and but there was Aragonese, there was Gallego, there was, imagine all these little kingdoms around the Iberian Peninsula, and they all spoke different dialects. So there were Jews all around, and they spoke the dialect that was spoken in the place where they were living. So when waves of these Spanish Jews arrived in the Ottoman Empire, they all arrived from these little kingdoms all around, but most of them came from the Kingdom of Castile. So just imagine a big cauldron, and into that cauldron, as a base, went Castiliano. Then over it went all the other little dialects from the Iberian Peninsula. Then when the Portuguese Jews were kind of thrown out, also some of them arrived. And as they didn't all come and at the same time. It took time. Some of them came on foot, some of them came by ship, some of them stayed in places like Italy, where there was no Inquisition until the Inquisition arrived. So all these languages along the way had their influence on the people who interacted with those languages. And so in went the influences of all these languages. And then the Sephardic Jews just settled in Western Anatolia, Thrace, the Marmara region, and the Balkans. So all the languages, and these were all Ottoman lands. The Ottoman Empire was huge, but the Spanish Jews settled in these places. Weren't there any Jews before them? Of course there were. There were Byzantine Jews, there were East Anatolian Jews who spoke Arabic or Aramaic. There were Jews who came from the Mesopotamia area. So, but our subject is the Spanish Jews who came in big waves, big population. Some historians say 100,000, some historians say 200,000. I mean, just imagine for that time, I mean, 15th century, end of 15th century, beginning of 16th century, this was like a huge population for an empire who had just started to grow and who needed people to populate it. So these are the places that the Jews settled. And they interacted, well, they did a lot of trade with Italy. And of course, with all the Balkan countries, especially Salonika became a very, very big cultural center. Edirne, Salonika, Istanbul, Izmir, these were the main cities. And there they interacted mainly with the Greek communities. And of course, uh, they settled in places that they called males because they wanted to be with people they knew. So when they first settled, they settled with people who came from their part of the world, from the same part of the world as they did, so that they would feel more comfortable, you know, being with our own people. Um, Now, the very specific administration of the Ottoman Empire, which called its ethnic communities, the communities that they conquered, dimi, which means it comes from the Turkish or rather Arabic word or even Persian, zimmi, which means under the protection of. So the Ottoman Empire, the administration of the Ottoman Empire, did not interfere with the internal affairs of the ethnic communities. The ethnic communities themselves had their own administration, from religious to very mundane kind of affairs. Okay, so they, that our rabbis, when they finish yeshiva, really in a non-secular country like the Ottoman Empire was, received also a degree of law so that they could administer the law to the Jewish communities. Um, so Ladino then was born in the Ottoman Empire. It's an Ottoman language, actually, born in the Ottoman Empire from all these influences. And it kept growing and adding influences through the years, because a language is not something, okay, I got a glass of water, this stays static and, like this if I don't drink it. No, no, no, no. A language is a live thing. It's alive. It lives. So it changes all the time, all the time. So in years for more than until the Turkish Republic was founded, 1923, the Jews were able to preserve this language, or a mixture of languages, if you like, with the basic Castellano at the very basis, until the Republic was founded. Now, a couple of things occurred. In the 1860s, the Alliance Israélite Universelle, which was a French Jewish institution, educational institution, opened 115 schools throughout the Ottoman Empire, French medium schools. Now, very important development, because for the first time, the women got to go to school. Until that time, it was only the men who went to yeshiva and who knew how to read and write, Hebrew mostly, and Judeo-Spanish in the old alphabet, which looked something like this. So this is the, let me hold the light. This is the Rashi alphabet that was used. It looks like Hebrew letters, but it's not really. It was an adaptation of the Hebrew letters so that Ladino could be read. Okay, so when you read these letters, you read Ladino. And here underneath, there are little squiggles. These are the handwritten form, which is called solitreo. So now this went on. Well, when the Alliance schools were founded, the Jewish community for the first time came into contact with Latin letters, and and suddenly their world was open, big horizons, because they were able to read Western works, philosophy, Western writers. They were all kind of translated into Ladino, and they were able to get it, to open their hearts. So for the first time, the women were able to get careers as teachers, as mostly teachers, but they were able to get careers. Now, if you have the women inside the house, never going out, interacting only with mothers, daughters, aunts, cousins, whatever, family, then it is very easy for the women to transmit all kinds of values, the social values, religious values, songs, food, whatever you want. But it's always from mother to daughter, okay? But as soon as the woman goes out of the house, and that is what, the very conservative people don't like. They don't like to see the women outside, because as soon as the women go outside, then the transmission of values declines. Well, I mean, that's life. There's always a price to pay for progress. That's what I say. Okay, progress is very good, obviously, but as long as you accept the consequences and that you pay the price that it takes. So when the Turkish Republic was founded, something else happened in 1934, and that was the reform of the alphabet. Now, Atatürk was adamant that the alphabet should be with Latin letters. Before that, the Ottoman language, which was made up of Turkish, Persian, and Arabic, was written in the old Ottoman letters, which look a little bit like the Hebrew letters, and also read from right to left. That was only read. It was difficult, and it was only read by an elite group. So as soon as the Latin letters arrived, again, there's a price to pay for progress. It was wonderful because the rate of people who learned how to read and write just, shot up. It was sky high. But what happened was that for hundreds of years, this empire existed, and so did the Jewish community. So everything that had been written for hundreds of years, so there was this big cut from the middle. All that had been written beforehand and all that had been written afterwards. So what happened? I mean, all that treasury, if you like, it's the case for everybody in the Ottoman Empire, okay, who had to go from old letters to new alphabet, to the new Latin alphabet. So for the Jews especially, and the Muslims, because the Greeks and the Armenians, they all had their own schools where they taught their own alphabet. So they didn't lose that. But for us Jews and for the Muslims, Turks, it was difficult because we lost everything. There's now a handful of people who can read all those old texts, books, and manuscripts, and whatever. So that is also a price to pay. And so what happened was, because the reading material was not that much, even though there were now, starting from the 19th century, there were a lot of newspapers written in Latin letters all around the Balkans and in Turkey as well. So still, Ladino declined. And by the time we come to the 1970s, Ladino was considered by some researchers, linguists, as a dying and even dead language. And in the 1970s, it is true that I was kind of teenager at that time. Yeah, it's true that, we didn't like our mothers to speak Ladino loudly in the streets. It wasn't a done thing. And so we didn't understand the value. Of course, we were kids. Then, now, we kind of, I'm sorry, there's a phone ringing, so I've got to close that. Zoom'dayım İzzet. Okay, sorry about that. So as I was saying, there was this decline of the language, and as the language declined, as people did not speak it that much, they spoke it less well. They kind of forgot their words, and in place of the words they forgot, they kind of substituted words they took from Turkish, Spanishizing them, and so they kind of came up with the ridiculous examples that people always give, like a sentence full of Turkish words in Spanish structure. Um, so when I was writing my theses, both my theses, I interviewed a lot of people, and they all said, "Oh, Ladino, it's a salad; it's not a language." And the prestige was really low. So then my generation, so everything got stuck in my generation. I mean, our parents transmitted to us, but we did not transmit to our kids. So what happened then? Yes, Jake, some kind of Spanglish, yes. This would be something like lad Turkish or something like that, or Turkish lad or whatever. Um, so then in the 1990s, what happened was that the Cervantes Institute was founded by the Spanish, who realized what the British Council had been doing for years, cultural imperialism. And what they did was, spread the Spanish culture and language. And so the Jews started to go to the Cervantes Institute to learn what they called real Spanish, as if ours was fake Spanish or something like that. So, however, the teachers at the Cervantes Institute realized that there were these kind of people who came to learn, who were better than everybody else, who understood what they were saying, but they made some drastic grammatical errors. So at first they didn't understand what was going on. Then they realized that these people were the Ladino speakers, or who knew Ladino, or who had heard Ladino. So what they had to do was they had to open special classes for Ladino speakers. So to cut things short, suddenly there was a revival of this Ladino language, because also the same time was the time when Jews started to travel. Until that time, it was difficult with Turkish political system to traveling was difficult. Plus, people used to go to the islands for the summer, and they didn't travel very much. So when they started traveling, they went to the Americas, and especially South America. They realized that the little knowledge of Ladino was very useful in communicating in countries whose language they didn't know. So they suddenly realized that they had something going on there. So I will go straight on to my presentation, which is when we founded the Sephardic Center. Okay, here we are. So I'm going to tell you about the activities of the Sephardic Center on the language and culture. Now, before 2003, I was teaching at the Bosphorus University in Istanbul, which used to be the American university before. Then the government took it over, or bought it from the Americans, I don't know. And it became a Turkish university, but it was an English medium university, like it was in the time of when it was the American university. So I taught there for 20 odd years, and most of that time I was also As I did my master's in applied linguistics, I was also the testing expert. But then after 20 years, you get to a place where, it's time for change. And here in Turkey, you could then you could retire after 20 years of government service. And that's what I did. And the Jewish community, they asked me if I could found a Sephardic culture research center. And I said yes, because that was what we needed actually. So in 2003, the the center was opened or founded under the auspices of the Chief Rabbinate of Turkey, and with the objectives of collecting, documenting, preserving as many of the Sephardic cultural elements and values that are in danger of disappearing. And the first thing that we wanted to do was, when I founded the center, there was only me, nobody else. But I had a lot of connections around the world. So I wrote to everybody that we were opening this. Everybody was very happy. But I had to kind of build everything from zero. Nothing. There was nothing. No books, no nothing, nothing, nothing. So we wanted to do a publication. At that particular time, the only publication that was in Ladino, the Shalom newspaper it is the only newspaper of the Turkish Jewish community, and the Shalom newspaper, which was founded by Avram Leon in 1947, used to be wholly in Ladino. Somebody's drawing things on my PowerPoint. I don't know why. Anyway, doesn't matter. You can see. The Shalom newspaper then was taken over by the Jewish community in 1983, and because young people could not, understand Ladino very well, so it is in Turkish with 1 page a week. It's a weekly newspaper, 1 page a week in Ladino. However, when we founded the center, we wanted to add another page. We said, well, we have a newspaper, so why not add another page? But for technical reasons, this was not possible. You cannot add 1 page to a newspaper. They said 4 pages. So at that particular time, we were not very, confident that we would be able to fill that page, 4 pages. Then we said, no, okay, then we'll do a supplement with 4 pages, 1 extra page every week. Then we'll fold the pages and they will be 8 pages. Okay, 8 pages is fine. 8 pages, I think we can fill. So we announced it to the whole world, and people were so enthusiastic. Apparently everybody wanted to write. So we started to get so much material that even the first issue came out with 12 pages because, we received too much material. Then the press, the printing said, you cannot have 12. It has to be multiples of 8. So you get 8, 16, 24, etc. So from the second month onwards, we had 16 pages until the end of that first year. And then again, we received so much material from the second year onward. And this was like 2003, 2005, we started publishing. From the second year onward, 24 pages until 3 years ago, when we started our own supplement, the Me'am Loez, and now our Amanecer is 32 pages. And the motto is, Cuando mucho escurece es para amanecer. When it gets really, really, really dark, it means dawn is coming. So amanecer is dawn. So it gives a message of hope, okay? Because this newspaper was founded at the darkest moment when, Ladino was about to die, let us say, but we did not let it die. So now it is when we found it, there was another newspaper. Well, it wasn't a newspaper, a publication wholly in Ladino, and that was Aki Yerushalayim, that had been published for many, many years before us by Moshe Shaul, the pioneer of this whole thing. And but then, unfortunately, they had to stop publishing. Lack of money, lack of people, lack of everything. So we are now the only newspaper in the world that is wholly in Ladino, 32 pages every month. It has a readership of 4,000, and people can subscribe to it in two ways. You can apply to the paper version by writing to elamanecer@gmail.com, or you can apply to the digital version by going to www.istanbulsephardiccenter.com, and you get the digital version and also all the other amanecers that have been published up to date. So it has authors and readers from all over the world. And that is wonderful to see that, like, sometimes I don't have enough space to fit in everything that, all the material that comes every month. So then we did a very important project that was called Ladino Database Project. We interviewed, this is the team that worked in that. They're all volunteers, all our members of the Sephardic Center are volunteers, and they give very valuable work. They do very valuable work. We interviewed 81 native speakers of Ladino from Istanbul and Izmir. And we now have 80 hours of the spoken language with their Motamo transcriptions, which is a great database, which we are hoping to include in the new website we are building. Then we did an oral history project in cooperation with Centropa, www.centropa.org. If you visit this website, it has wonderful information about everything. Centropa is Central and Eastern European Jewish countries, Jewish communities. So the Centropa Oral History Project, we interviewed 50 people over the age of 70, and we got very detailed accounts of their lives. And that was very important because we learned a lot of things that, people, our parents, grandparents did not used to tell us much detail about their lives. And we are a very important country for this project, because all the other countries that were part of this project, first, they were mostly Ashkenazi. And second, they had all, apart from the Turkish community, lived through the Holocaust. So we are the only country where 95% of the population, Jewish population, is Sephardic, more than 95% really. And we are the only country where, when you read the histories of the people, it's just one life, not before and after like the people in the other countries. It's a great website. I really recommend that you go and see what it's telling you. It's beautiful, beautiful stories. We have stories of people of many countries, and also films that were made from the pictures, from the photos we collected. Then there was this project. Now the maftirim are the there is no one after me, right? Mark? Mark, there is no one after
Sorry, I
me.
had to get off mute. No, there is no one after you.
Oh, okay. So
Feel free to take as long as you want. This is very interesting.
I can talk to my heart's delight then. Okay.
I love it.
Okay. So now, let me give you a little information about the maftirim. The maftirim is a sort of para-liturgical hymns that were born in Edirne. Edirne used to be the capital of the Ottoman Empire. So in Edirne, people were very close, especially the Sufis, the mystical Turkish philosophers, they have a certain kind of chanting, mystical chanting. So our Hazanut also, they loved these Turkish makams, and they learned from the Sufis how to chant as well. So in Edirne, this was born, and in time, you see, when it was first born, the quality of the poetry was higher than the music. Then in time, people were so into the music that the music kind of went up, really up. But I mean, when you listen to them, it's just absolutely wonderful. And the quality of the poetry, well, it was more, let us say, monotonous. Usually the poetry is about Yerushalayim, about how wonderful it would be to live there, and what a wonderful city it is, and praising God and Yerushalayim, etc., etc. But the music is really, really wonderful. It's mystical, and it's sung with the Turkish makams. So I knew that a very nice gentleman from our community got together the last three masters of this music, because usually how it was learned was from master to apprentice, master to apprentice. So there were choirs, maftirim choirs, and the choir master would teach the others. And then somebody else would be choir master, and he would teach the others. So there, of the hundreds and hundreds of these wonderful poems, what came to us, what remained, were 63 hymns. So thank God that that gentleman had the idea to get these three masters of this music together in a synagogue. He built, even he had a studio built, and he told them just to sing. So we have like nearly 6 hours of recorded beautiful music, and it's a cappella. They don't use any instruments. And for the book, my God, it was very hard work. I asked Professor Edwin Serusi to write the introduction, because he's an expert of Maftirim, and also president president of the music department of the Hebrew University, and a very, very, very wonderful person, Isaac Yerushalmi, Rav Isaac Yerushalmi. He was the one to whom I owe really the book, because I wanted to translate the poems. As I said before, everything that comes out, or did I say it? Anyway, I'm saying it now. Anything that comes out of my office comes in three languages: English, Turkish, and Ladino. So I wanted to translate these poems, and Edwin Serusi had told me, you can't do that. It's very difficult. It's Old Hebrew, and there is no one who can do it. And then I said, well, who in the world can do it? I said, Isaac Yerushalmi can do it. So I wrote to Isaac Yerushalmi, who was, unfortunately, well, fortunately for us, Kuzguncuk born from here, from Istanbul, and who was a professor in the Hebrew Academy or something in Cincinnati, Ohio, I think. And he was a genius. I mean, he knew like something like 16, 17 languages, and he knew them well. Yeah, he knew them very well. He taught, antique languages at this academy. So when I sent him what I thought we had done, the translations we had done with the rabbis here, he told me that, just throw them in the garbage can, because it's not right. So then we had to hire a professor in Tel Aviv University who was an expert in Old Hebrew, in medieval Hebrew. And she and he had these great conversations, because Isaac Yerushalmi wanted the nekudot put under the vowels put in. And you should have seen the emails that they sent each other. They say, one of them said, but in this parasha this has the a sound in three dots. The other said, but in this parasha it has two dots, but in this, I mean, it took them about a year to get all the dots in. And then Isaac Yerushalmi did this absolutely beautiful translation into English and Ladino. I mean, wonderful, wonderful. And I translated his work into Turkish. So by the end, and then came the part, also very, very difficult, to get all the music, uh, all the scores right, because this was Turkish classical music. That was another adventure altogether. Anyway, 6 years of hard work, of checking, double checking, triple checking, and finally we got a masterpiece. And here you have this book, 360-page book, 4 CDs and 1 DVD. And thank God we have the 63 hymns recorded, documented, and preserved. Then we have other projects. As I said, the Shalom newspaper has 1 page a week, and about three and a half years ago, the person who was in charge of it, Clara Perachia, unfortunately died. May she rest in peace. She was a wonderful, wonderful lady, 97, 98 years old. And until her last week, she wrote in her article for the Shalom. And when she passed away, I took the responsibility of this page in Ladino, and have been recruiting young people to write in the Shalom, have been encouraging young people to write. If they write with mistakes, I correct them, and they learn from their mistakes. So now I have a lot of young writers as well, something that had never happened before, and we have a lot of material which in 1 page, it doesn't all go in. So we have fights. What about my writing? What about mine? What about mine? So I, begged the Shalom administration to give me at least once a month, 2 pages. And that's where I put in all the extra articles. So then we have all these wonderful ladies and gentlemen in our Sephardic center, and with them we do a lot of projects. Of course, it takes a long time because everybody does it in their own time, but we collect proverbs and idioms. We are collecting words that are not in the dictionaries. So people remember words that are still, in people's memories. We collect new recipes from different cities. We collect people's stories, and we collect anything and everything. Okay, so so a lot of material is being piled up. Then, of course, comes the publications. 3-4 years ago, I went to Paris to work in the headquarters of the Alliance Israélite Universelle. I worked there for 2 weeks, and I came across a collection of stories, well, novellas really, that had been published in the Turkish newspapers in the 1920s and early 1930s. Now, these were in the newspapers, it was like something like, very short installments, maybe every week or something. And so they have been, they are very interesting to read, because they see that you can see the point of view of men about the women. They, in the 1920s, 30s, they think that women are, trying to cheat men of their money, and they all the women want rich husbands, and they do all kinds of intrigues, so women are not really seen as a, very nice, they don't have a very nice image. But what I did was, I liked the stories and the Ladino in them. Obviously, they were all in Ladino. So when I came back, I got the films, and I wrote all of them down again, because there were lots of errors in the old written form, etc. into the news, into the computer, and we published them 16 short love stories in Judeo-Spanish that had been published in the 1930s, republished by our center in sets of 3, and the last one a set of 4. Then we did the only book of caricatures in the world, entirely in Judeo-Spanish. We have a wonderful, wonderful Ashkenazi caricaturist in Turkey. He's the caricaturist of Shalom, but I call all the Ashkenazis in Istanbul watered down versions of Ashkenazis, because there are so few. All of them are kind of results of intermarriages between Ashkenazis and Sephardic people. So, I call them, none of you is pure Ashkenazi, you're all watered down versions. So they're all considered Sephardic as far as I'm concerned. And he's got this series of caricatures called La Familia Mosotros, meaning our family. And he's got this wonderful sense of humor. So, and a lot of books, but his caricatures are usually in Turkish. So I kind of went through all these books and picked the ones that would be understood worldwide and translated them into Ladino, and we published it. It's a great book, really very funny. Then we have this wonderful little lady in Israel called Matilda Cohen Sarano, and of Italian origin, but who lives in Israel. And for many, many, many years, she's a prolific writer. She collected anecdotes, stories, legends, and she published a lot of books, which went out of print because they were all sold, and so we wanted to republish all her books. We have published 4 of them, 2 are in the making. So again, these are wonderful books. I really recommend that you read them. They're wonderful stories, legends, if you know Ladino, of course. And for reading materials and music in Ladino, you can go to www Istanbul Sephardic Center, and you can have all this material here. Cookbooks, proverbs and idioms, the Maftirim collection, Zemirot, Tango Sephardi, etc., etc. Then, about 3 years ago, the young people in our center said, we should teach young people. And the way to do that is through the internet and through the social media, just what Carlos was talking about. So 1 year, a whole year, we went with Viervo del Dia, which means the word of the day. So we taught one word every day. So you see here 4 languages: El Tío, which is in Judeo-Spanish, in Turkish, English, and Spanish. And 6 words every week. And on the 7th day, we gave all the 6 words. That went on for a whole year, about 300 something words. Then the following year, we did again a whole year of every day one phrase. Okay, so it's like yo me levanto a las 7 cada día, I get up at 7 every day, etc. And we again went on with, and with this, when we started with at first the word of the day, young people kept phoning me and asking me to make a WhatsApp group so that I would be able to give the word through WhatsApp as well. And suddenly I had 400 young people in my WhatsApp groups. And what I was able to do with WhatsApp, I published this, I gave this as a visual. And underneath that word, I also read the word. So they were able to hear how it was pronounced. A better learning mechanism, I would say. Then if you search the YouTube for Centro Sephardi, what will you find? You will find videos in Ladino with subtitles in English, songs in Ladino with subtitles in English, caricatures in Ladino, dubbed, stories, memoirs in Ladino, a lot of things in Ladino. So you can go into YouTube, write Centro Sephardi, and you'll find all this material there. Then there are a series of 10 lessons in Ladino. If you search for Karen Sarhon and Ladino, but with explanations in Turkish, and another series of lessons started on 16th of December for the Sephardic Brotherhood of New York. And you can find all the lessons until now, 8 of them to date, at www.sephardicbrotherhood.com/Ladino101. sephardicbrotherhood.com/Ladino101. So the lessons are all there, and with explanations in English, obviously, yes. Song and language and song. So we even had, Jake always comes, we even had a one lesson with all the bad words, swear words, curses, and and spicy kind of anecdotes as well. So, it's always good to teach when people are having fun. And then, as again Carlos mentioned, it's this summer, as everybody was kind of home and not going anywhere, our friends from Argentina, Liliana and Marcelo Benveniste, from the Sefarad institute, let's say, or center, they had this wonderful idea of gathering all interested institutions together every Sunday, when one institution would be the host, and they would invite a guest to speak in Ladino for a whole hour. This has had a huge success. I mean, I'm very surprised, but every week the subject is more interesting than the other. I mean, really, very, very interesting subjects, very interesting guests, very nice, and sometimes a lot of fun, sometimes with so much information, but it's all in Ladino. Encontros, they'll have Sunday meetings. And up to now, we've had 24 such meetings. So, and you can find the recorded videos of these sessions at Sefarad/TV, www.sefarad/TV. They're all there. And now, a bit for the future, on the 21st of February this month, we are preparing the Día Internacional del Judeo Español Ladino Istanbul. So the International Ladino Day of Istanbul will be on the 21st of February. And of course, unfortunately, it will be on Zoom. Until this year, we were the only country in the world that could organize an International Ladino Day for a whole day of people speaking in Ladino, of activities in Ladino, 400 and more participants, all speaking in Ladino. That could only happen in Istanbul. And I'm very, very proud to say that our center, with all its members and volunteers, we were able to pull this off, every year until this year. Now, this year we have a big challenge because, again, our program is the longest in the world. It will be 3 hours, but we realized that making people sit for 3 hours is a bit challenging. It's a bit too much. So we're having it's a huge program, but short, short things, because people's attention span is not the same when they're sitting as when they're watching something on the stage. So there's going to be talks, songs, and we are preparing a theater play, and this Sunday we have the recording of that play. We're going to make it into a little documentary film, because there's also a technological problem with Zoom that, when people from different parts of the world speak, or from different homes with their Wi-Fi, if it is not strong enough, etc. So we are trying to overcome all these technological difficulties and see how we do it. So it's a big challenge, big challenge. And of course, we will be announcing the program as we get closer to the day, and it will be a great day. And if you want to kind of support our center for the work it is doing, you can do so by buying a certificate or 2 or 10, whatever, at www.istanbulsephardiccenter.com. You will get this certificate, which says it thanks you for your support to our center. www.sephardiccenter.com. And as I'm putting this and I'm learning how to deal with this sales website, I put in, it's under the products, but the real place where it appears is here. And I'll send, if I don't know, Mark, I can send you the PowerPoint afterwards, and you can announce it. I don't know.
That'd be great. Yes, and I will post it. I'll upload the file.
Okay, great.
And feel free to advertise any of these events on our group.
Yes, I will. Okay. So I'm trying to make it like the first thing that can be seen. And there is also going to be a brochure of the Ladino Day. So everything together. I'm learning. So here's the end of my PowerPoint. And that is all that we are doing.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions? I would like to, have people ask. This is a great opportunity here.
I think I've covered everything.
Well, I would beg to differ. I would invite you, I want to discuss with you more opportunities in the future, because you have so much knowledge and all this incredible stuff. Like you say, it's very difficult in one session. So let's do some more planning. And, Karen and I have been collaborating on all these wonderful events, and I'm always so impressed. It's just a world of knowledge that we want to share and, and educate. And this is really important for us to, spread this, wonderful information. This is something we can all be proud of, because this is part of our heritage.
Very true. I've been working at it for a long time. So, well, nearly what? 20, yeah, nearly 20 years. Okay. And before that, with my music group, we started collecting, documenting in 1977, 78, 79, something like that. So it's been a long time.
Very good. So thank you everyone for attending, and I will be posting this recording. Bravo. And Karen will be talking again very soon. And our next event on February 18th, don't miss that. We will be talking about food. So that's always a fun topic.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody wants to know about food. So, my last lesson here this week, I taught them how to make some of the food. So everybody had fun. So bye, everyone. See you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.